Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Nami vs Hancock by FoxChicken19. Oh? What's this? Boa Hancock is visiting the Straw Hat crew. What? And why is she hanging all over Luffy? Nami, step it up! What are you gonna do? The warlord of my channel are. NeoEsker23, Derek Dowdy, Zazu Syaz, Abdul Raf Ali, N3WT, What _ if _ Lord, Black Money _ Young Leon, Garrick Russell, Ben Brownlee, Case Clark, Tristan Ward, KSGPL4YZ, Brian McKenzie. Join the channel membership if you would like to support the channel. Adios.
Chapter 16. So that makes 10, right? Tsubaki said, adjusting her skirt and stepping over the guy tied up. 11. Kira corrected absent-mindedly, looking around the room. Actually, it was the kitchen. 2 cooks had been there. If there were about 30 men in total, like I suggested, the number of cooks definitely supported that idea. While Sanji may have easily fed an army, other pirates would need more cooks with more people. We're almost halfway, Hannah said. We can do this. We really can do this. I wiped my forehead and forced myself to take slow breaths. See what a little willpower can do? Yeah, are you okay? Chika asked. She'd become a lot more civil to me, though she still called me pirate. Baby steps though. I'm fine, I lied. Don't worry about me right now. Let's keep going. We could always take a small break, Rand suggested. We took some food with us from the storage room. We need to keep our energy up. They all agreed. I couldn't refuse when I needed it the most. Not that I'd admit it. Pass me a lime, I told Kira, who was still carrying the bag. I needed something citrusy. It wasn't a Mikan, but it was definitely the closest thing to one on this ship. I wasn't sure how to open it without a knife, and I wasn't about to use one of the knives from the pirates we'd taken them from, so with no other option, I dug my nail into the peel and slowly stripped the lime of its skin. I bit into the lime as the peel fell away. It was so sweet it was sour. Nothing like my Mikans. The juices stung my lips, which were still dry from the heat of the fire. But I continued to eat it until it was gone nonetheless. Have you seen Hancock? Mitsuki asked, sitting beside Robin at the aquarium bar. Going to tease her again? Robin flipped the page without looking up. Maybe, she replied, grinning a little bit. There's no need to, Robin said. You should find another way to occupy your time. Read a book or something. I've looked at tons of books, she sighed, leaning onto the counter. But have you read any of them? Of course I read them, she snorted. But I'm sick of staring at letters on pages. I want to do something interesting. And something interesting involves ruining Hancock? Robin turned the page. Isn't enough already that she knows that Luffy loves Nami? You know, Mitsuki was surprised. I hear all and see all on this ship. Robin glanced up. How useful, she murmured, avoiding her gaze. Robin agreed, going back to her book after a moment. It does have its uses. Mitsuki looked at the older woman, who yet again turned the page after a moment. If that was indeed the case that Robin could see and hear everything, how come she hadn't seen Nami get taken? Yeah, I bet. My arms and legs feel like they're going to fall off, Tsubaki said, kicking the most recent guy that we'd defeated. The battles were becoming a struggle. These girls didn't have the physical strength to fight so many men, even if they weren't all at once. You're doing great, I told them. There are only a few more guys, we can do this. Few more guys? You said that at 13, Chika said. You're going delusional, pirate. Footsteps, Rand said. Gag him quickly. He GMFF, Chika stuffed the last sock into his mouth and kept it in there with her hand covering his mouth. Rand gestured. 4 guys. Taking out these 4 would definitely leave them one step closer to succeeding. But 4? Wasn't that too many for a group of 7? While I could take one myself, if the girls divided themselves up more than 3 to 3 between 2 guys, could they do it? Was I doubting them too much? I took a shaky breath, walking to the door with my hand on the knob, ready to throw it open and praying that these guys were nothing more than weaklings when I noticed something displayed on the shelf. Hand me that, I said to Hannah. She pointed to the unique shell that lay there, and I nodded. She picked it up, looked it over, and tossed it to me. I smiled as I looked it over. Idiots probably hadn't even known what it was before placing it there. I placed it on the ground and took a firm hold of my staff, swinging down hard. I picked it up, and tore off a strip of fabric from my shirt. I tied the shell to my hand, and then ripped another couple of strips so that it hid the shell completely. I shook my hand to make sure it was secure. The only thing I was really worried about was, "What are you doing?" Chica asked. "This is a special shell," I murmured. "It's called a dial." "I'll explain later. Let's get rid of these guys first." I threw open the door, but lost my balance and stumbled into the opposite wall. Nami, Tsubaki sounded worried, but I recovered, grabbing my staff and sliding my hands into position. I swung at the first guy, but the way these guys carried themselves were already completely different from the others. So this is why groups A through C weren't responding. One of the guys smacked Tsubaki aside as if she were a fly. Not that they weren't used to getting thrown around by this point. Not all of the previous guys we'd taken down had been easy. Tsubaki got to her feet, determined to win despite the odds. It felt like we were winning this on sheer willpower. Luffy had willpower. "Nami!" Hana cried out as a hand grabbed my throat. I closed my eyes as it got hard to breathe, but opened them to stare this guy in the eye. I was an idiot for letting my concentration waver. "Nice bodies, they all have nice bodies," he murmured, and his friends laughed. "And they're frisky. I've always loved a fighting girl. After a while, the ones that cry get kind of boring." I put my bandaged hand on his chest. He grinned as I lifted my other hand to cover the bandaged one. "You like it, huh? Need a man, darling? Fuck you," I spat out. His face went red with anger, and his grip tightened around my neck. But I made use of the dial in my hand, and pressed the button to release the power that was stored. I winced as he stumbled back, and Hana was able to jump on him, stabbing him in the chest. The girls didn't bat an eyelash in this situation. How could they? Chica, Ran, and Kira were caught in the tight grips of the guys. Their knives out of reach, and their power not enough no matter how much they struggled. The guy holding Kira tossed her aside, and came after me, his voice echoing in the hall as he shouted, "You bitch." My hands were all beaten up, though it wasn't nearly as bad as the time I'd used the impact dial in Skypia. I threw my hand up as his fist came down, and while it pushed me back, I was sure the impact was absorbed. As he came at me again, I ducked between his legs, lifted my hand above my hand, released the impact and... "That had to hurt," Hana said, watching as he crumpled to the floor. "I'm starting to get what's going on with that dial thing." My hands were beaten up worse now. Blood stained the fabric around the impact. I didn't think my arm, or the fabric, could take another release, but if I needed to do 100 more, I would do it for the sake of winning this battle. Ran, Kira called, before getting her face slammed into the floor. I grabbed my staff and attacked, but he turned and swatted me aside. I hit the wall again. "Pirate!" Chica called out to me as I slunk to the floor. I held my hand up as the guy hit me, but not in time. My cheek banged into the wall with the force. The guy picked me up and threw me. The strips holding the dial on my hand loosened slightly. I panted heavily, trying to fix them as he came up behind me. "Nami!" Those that were conscious enough were shouting anxiously. As much as I hated to admit it, we needed help. We were so close, but we couldn't do this alone. The guy kicked my hands, and the impact dial slipped out and clattered to the floor. The next kick came swiftly to my gut, and I flew into the door that had led us to this hallway. Help, we needed help. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji. No, they weren't around. I struggled to think of someone that could help. Kyoshi, the name came of my lips to know what I was expecting to happen. I had left him there, chained to the wall. I regretted it now, as the man advanced on me once more. I flew forward as the door was kicked off its hinges. It slammed into the back of my head, but kept going. It hit the guy that had been advancing, and he fell to the floor unconscious on impact. "Captain," the guy left standing said. "We were wondering where you disappeared to. These girls, they must have Eska." He was shut up instantly, as whoever had sent that door flying in a voice that I recognized, even if it were only slightly spoke. "Captain?" I turned to look at Kyoshi. His tall figure just as dark as it had been in the room with no light. I didn't regret not taking him along anymore. I just wanted to see how far a Straw Hat Pirate could take this. Kiyoshi knelt down beside me, grabbing me by my hair and lifting my face off the floor. I spat blood in his face. He frowned, but didn't wipe it off. Not bad. A Straw Hat Pirate, indeed. Good show. I thought you said if I called you, you'd help us, I said, panting for air and fighting for consciousness. I am helping you. He let my face hit the floor as he stood up. Any longer and you probably would have been dead. Chopper, Usopp and Frankie watched Luffy walk across the lawn deck towards them. He probably wanted his seat atop the figurehead. Perhaps he was checking again to make sure that they were still on course. The rain had gotten heavier, which in turn made the atmosphere that was felt on the ship that much darker. No one had seen Hancock since lunch. It was almost time for dinner. Zoro exited the men's quarters below, passing Luffy with a worried glance that could be seen even through the rain. They had just passed each other when Luffy doubled over in pain. Luffy's hat fell off his head, landing upside down on the deck. Luffy! Chopper cried out. He leapt over the railing and landed on the lawn deck, gathering his balance quickly before rushing over to the captain. Luffy, what's wrong? I'm fine, Luffy said, fighting to get back on his feet. He picked his hat up and dusted it off, a useless gesture in the rain, and continued walking, holding his hat loosely by his side. I just fell. It was a lie. An obvious lie. And Luffy knew it. He hurt all over. His body and his heart. Instead of going to the figurehead as planned, he changed his direction to the men's quarters. Maybe he'd be better after a nap. Despite being worried, none of them could bring themselves to go after him. He made it feel like they couldn't follow him anyway. We're going to get her back, Zoro called after him as the rain began to fall even harder. We'll get her back, safe and sound. Luffy paused in the doorway and turned to his first mate. His hair was matted to his face in wet clumps, and his eyes were dark and penetrating. But he smiled. Somehow that made the crew even more worried. She, Luffy laughed. I know, Nami can handle herself. So what was this feeling of despair? Nami? Tsubaki called from across the room. All the girls were in one room now, the one that Kira and the other girls had been in previously. In my head I labeled the girls A, B, C and D, only because it felt like it didn't matter at this point. We were back where we started. Only worse, the 7 of us that had gotten so far were now chained to the wall. All that fighting, and this is how we ended up. I knew it wasn't, but it all seemed so useless. I'm sorry, I said, lifting my chained hand to touch my forehead. I was sweaty, and it wasn't from the fighting. If I denied it before, there was no point then. I had a fever. Don't be, Chika said, we would never have gotten so far without you. Far? I forced a cold laugh. Look at us. We took 1 step forward, and were pushed 2 steps back. No, we got really far, Chika insisted. We took down, like, 20 of those bastards. 22, out of who knows how many more, Hannah said. But how is that not a feat? Before this, I had barely lifted a hand to fetch water, Rand said. Now I can say I have the will to fight an impossible battle, no matter the consequences. And we didn't go into this without knowing the consequences. Nami? I heard and saw Tsubaki calling my name, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. My vision was really blurry. I squeezed my eyes shut. It was really hard to breathe. It felt like there was a weight on my chest. I felt hot. I felt cold. Hey, you, check on her for us. Chika nodded to one of the girls. I am fine, I told them, pulling away as they neared. I'll be. Someone should go call Luffy for dinner, Sanji said, lighting his smoke and exhaling slowly. He rested his hand against his leg as he leaned his back against the counter. I'm surprised he's not here already. Really, because I'm not, Zoro muttered, lifting his nearly empty glass to his lips. His eyes met Robin's across the table. He looked away after a moment, setting his glass down and lifting his leg to rest his ankle on his knee, and leaned back. I'll go check, Frankie sighed, pushing back his chair. They were all silent, staring at nothing as Frankie's heavy footsteps made their way to the door. As the door shut, they all heard Frankie mutter, "Damn this rain." Has anyone seen the Empress? Usopp asked. She's probably in the bathhouse still, Robin murmured. If not, she may be sleeping. She'll find us when she's ready. More silence. I'm sick of this, Mitsuki said, pushing away from the table. Nami wouldn't want us all to be sitting around like this. We're not just sitting around, we're heading for the island, Zoro said. What happened to the happy pirates that I faced when I got on this ship? Mitsuki waved her hand around the room. You aren't them. You make it feel like someone has died. Nami hasn't died, she's fine, she's alive, and probably thinking of a plan to escape. Tears welled up in her eyes, and they all avoided looking at her. What would she say if she were here? She muttered. She fell to her knees and pressed her palm into her eye, her shoulders shaking with each heavy sob. This all could have been avoided if, stupid Hancock, stupid Luffy. The door slammed open, and Frankie stood there, his frame filling the entirety of the door as he chose not to enter. Chopper, Luffy needs a doctor, now. She's burning up, May said, fussing over Nami. She's fallen unconscious, Nana said. Chika rubbed the bridge of her nose. She was fighting in that condition? What was she trying to do? Kill herself? No, she was trying to save us, Tsubaki said. Hey, one of you, come here and take my skirt off and wrap it around her. She needs to get warm. Take my sweater, Ran said. And Ren's. She needs them more than we do. The arms, May began, seeing it as an obvious problem. Rip them by the seams if you have to, Ran told her firmly. May obeyed. The water that he left us, Chika said. We should tend to her fever with that. Take my shirt if you need to. You're all so generous, Hannah said. Take her hairpin from her hair and try to undo the locks on her chains. She needs to lie down and rest. That position she's in isn't going to do her much good. Got it, Eva said, retrieving the hairpin. But I wouldn't even know where to begin. Let me, Olivia said, taking it from her. My grandmother used to keep me locked in a room. I'll be damned if I can't undo chains like these. Another escape artist, Chika commented. I guess they do have their uses. See, not all pirates are bad, Hannah said. But most of them are, Kira said. The other girls agreed. But we can all admit that Nami's one of the good pirates, right? Ren asked, surprising everybody. She usually let her sister talk for her. Yes, Ran told her twin. Nami is definitely one of the good pirates. So her crew must be good too, right? Ren pressed. I don't think Nami would be with them otherwise, Tsubaki said. Do you have those chains undone yet? If you do, come and help me out. I'll tend to. Let us all out. Ruwara said. Olivia laid Nami down on her back, with the sweaters beneath her and the skirt lying over top. May poured water over Chika's folded shirt before bringing it over and laying it on her forehead. They all just hoped their hero would be alright. Chapter 17. We stood facing each other on the upper deck beside the mic and trees. His gaze was soft as he looked me over as if searching for scars and bruises. But just seeing him made every trace of pain disappear completely. This feeling, this was what it meant to be in love. And the way he stared at me in that moment just made me want to believe that he just, maybe, loved me too. Not Hancock, or Vivi, or Robin, or any other girl in general. I wanted to believe that he loved me. Was that too much to ask for? Nami, Luffy reached for me. He touched my arm gently with just his index and middle finger. Slowly the rest of his fingers wrapped around my upper arm and he drew me closer to him. He rested his chin on the top of my head. I was stiff in his arms, but relaxed after a moment. I missed you. I missed you too, I replied automatically. Luffy, Nami, he interrupted. Luffy held me against him, even when I tried to pull away to look at his face. So instead I kept my face in his chest. It all felt natural as he spoke to me. Nami. My heart hurts. It's been hurting for a while now. Don't leave me. Stay by my side, forever. Mine does too, unsure of what else to do. I lifted my arms and gripped the back of his shirt. And I will. I closed my eyes and pressed my cheek to his chest. I was confused, but I liked this. This was comfortable. This made me feel safe. I wished I could have stayed this way forever. FFY, Nami mumbled inaudibly. You. They were all silent for a moment before Chika asked, is she waking up? I don't think so, her fever hasn't broken yet. Tsubaki held her knees to her chest and watched the rise and fall of Nami's chest. It's been a full day. None of us are doctors, so we can't even determine what the cause is. Ran sat with Nami's head in her lap. I want her to get better, quickly. I wish they'd bring us something to eat, Hannah said, holding her stomach. She was sitting in the corner very much like she had been when they'd been captive in the other room. And water. Well, we stabbed their legs. They must be short of people, Chika muttered. We should have just tied them and gagged them. I don't feel like what we did is any less than what they deserved, Hannah said spitefully. All men deserve to suffer pain. That's not true, Rand snorted, just pirates and bandits. You don't have to be a bandit or a pirate to commit a horrible act. No one said anything. They'd all been a little scared of Hannah since they'd been recaptured. She carried herself differently now. But what she said was right. You didn't have to be a pirate or a bandit to commit a horrible act. Someone's coming, Rand said suddenly. None of them moved, though their eyes did fall on the chains they were supposed to be in. The door clicked, and they glared at Kiyoshi as he entered. He took one look at the chains, and them surrounding Nami's sick body, and hardly batted an eyelash. He placed a bag of food on the floor and was about to leave, but Rand called out to him. Why? He partially turned, and they all stared at his profile. Why? She repeated, not backing down despite how much she feared him. Why what? Why say that we could call on you to help us when you're the captain of this ship? Why take us down after we got so far already? Kira asked, squaring her shoulders. Why leave Nami in this state? She could die. Whether she dies or not is none of my concern, he shrugged, ignoring all the other questions. It'll concern you when her crew comes along, Chika said, standing up. They'll take you down as if you were nothing but air, and you'll regret not saving her when you had the chance. I'm willing to take the risk, he said. Though, perhaps things would be different if our doctor hadn't been killed. Killed? Murdered? Stabbed in the chest? Kiyoshi tapped over his heart. Did you kill him? You heard the murderer comment. I see. If you feel you must know. While I have killed someone and one of my crew members didn't like it and chained me to a wall with no light, food or water for a few days, I did not kill our doctor. That would be sheer stupidity, he said. So who did you kill? And who killed the doctor? Tsubaki asked. I killed the last captain and most of the crew supported it, Kiyoshi said. As for who killed our doctor, well, perhaps one of you would like to step forward. No, we only stabbed their legs, Chika said. The only guy we stabbed in the chest was the guy that grabbed Nami's throat in the hallway that you found us in. Apparently, that isn't the case. Well, I'll leave that up to you. We arrive in 4 hours. Maybe one of the doctors there will be willing to look after her, he said, opening the door and leaving. He rubbed his wrists outside the closed door, having had to force his hands through the chain's cuffs. If the Straw Hat pirate hadn't left the door unlocked, it would have been a hell of a lot more work for him to do. They all heard the door lock. Rand traced his footsteps down the hall as he went, not pausing or hesitating for a moment. Hannah? Rand looked away from the door, but not directly at the girl she was speaking to. Hannah? Tsubaki repeated, surprised. You mean? I could hear it the entire time. Rand covered her ears as she imagined it. The muffled screams as they became aware that they were going to be stabbed. She remembered glancing at Nami, who seemed suspicious but didn't say a single word every time that Hannah came out of a room later than them. Isn't it good? We cut their numbers down tremendously. Hannah stared at her hands, where under her nails there was blood. If you're worried about staying in the same room as me though, don't be. I only hate men. A relief, Chika said sarcastically. Isn't it? Hannah glanced at her quickly. They all fell silent once more, unable to do anything to save Nami, nor rid themselves of their new danger. If they thought they had felt helpless before Nami came along, it was nothing compared to how they all felt then. You should eat, Chopper. Zoro stood in the doorway. He wanted to tell the doctor to rest, but that would make him a hypocrite, as he wouldn't dare close his eyes himself for as much as a wink of sleep. I'm not hungry. The reindeer sat in his chair, staring at Luffy. I've hardly broken his fever. I have no idea what's wrong with him. It's not infection, it's not disease. It's not even a cold, there's just this fever. So you don't know what's wrong with him? First Nami, now this? Chopper covered his face with his hands. I hate this. Why don't you get Robin to look it up for you? Zoro asked, sitting down on the floor and leaning against the wall. I have her checking out a few books, and Mitsuki's grabbing me a few more to look over, but I'm certain there's nothing in them. Even if there were, how could we tell? His only symptom is this ridiculously high fever. Chopper rubbed his eyes, getting even less sleep than he had since Hancock and Salome came to stay on the ship. He was glad that the snake had disappeared, even if it were only temporarily. Chopper shook his head to clear his mind before thinking out loud. He's not responding to the antibiotics, meaning it's not bacteria. I'd have to treat what's causing the fever, but I don't know what's causing the fever. Just let him sleep it off, Zoro shrugged. He's made it this far in the adventure, he'll make it to the end. And he definitely won't die before he sees Nami once more. I hope she's alright too, Chopper murmured. Am I? Luffy muttered, twisting and turning, the sheets on the bed getting wrapped around him. Me? Zoro repeated. Meet? It's Luffy that we're dealing with here, Chopper shrugged. I can't decipher half of what he mumbles. I don't think he'd be twisting and turning if it were a dream about meat, Sanji said, coming to the door. He took out his package of smokes and shook out another. He stared at it in his hand before wrapping his fingers around it. He wondered how many he had smoked that day. He'd lost count. But with a helpless sigh he put this cigarette to his lips as he took out his matches. That's an awful habit, Chopper said, glancing at him, just to remind you. I'm well aware, Sanji muttered as he lit the smoke. He exhaled slowly and nodded at Luffy. How's he doing? How does it look like he's doing? Zoro snorted. You, stop. Mitsuki entered the room with a fresh stack of books for Chopper. She dropped them on his desk and sat on the edge of the bed on which Luffy lay. You should all probably leave, in case it's contagious, Chopper muttered, cracking one of the books open. None of them moved though, out of concern for their captain. The sun will be rising soon, Sanji said after a moment. I'll make a light breakfast. He waited to see if anyone would say anything before turning and walking away. He had hardly made it past the table when Mitsuki cried out, Luffy. He rushed back to see Luffy trying to get up. His cheeks were flushed, and his eyes were dulled, but his determination was still strong. I have to, Luffy murmured, sitting up on the bed. He swung his legs over the edge. Have to what, Luffy? Chopper asked. I have to go. Luffy pushed himself up off the bed. He swayed in the middle of the room as he just stood there. To the washroom? Chopper asked, fussing over him to make sure he didn't fall over. I need to save Nami. Luffy took a step forward towards the door. She's in trouble, I just know. He collapsed, and Chopper caught him, laying him back down on the bed. He watched as Luffy breathed heavily and frowned deeply. He hated this. He hated this so much. Chopper hated being right here beside him and unable to do anything. The same way he hated not being with Nami now and not knowing whether she was alright or not. Could this all have been preventable? Who was to blame? Get up, get moving. One of the crew they hadn't touched forced them to their feet and towards the door. He even made Nami walk by herself, although she stumbled and could hardly stand on her own. The girls hated him for not letting them help her. Where are we going? Nami asked, looking at Tsubaki but not really seeing. We're at the island now. Tsubaki placed a gentle hand on Nami's elbow. We'll all be rescued soon. Oh. Tsubaki wasn't sure if Nami even took in what she'd just told her. I feel sick, Nami said suddenly, doubling over and throwing up. Keep moving, the guy said impatiently. Screw off, Chika shouted. Can't you see she needs medical attention? I got it from here, Kiyoshi said from the doorway. Go and tell a doctor to prepare for her. She won't have a ransom if she's dead. He hesitated, but walked past his captain and away from the girls. Kiyoshi watched him as he went, and then gestured for May and Olivia to help Nami. They obeyed immediately, and they followed him down the hall and towards the room the kidnappers had used when bringing the girls in. The only difference from earlier was that there was now a ladder up to the hole in the ceiling. We can't climb with her, May said looking at the ladder. You can take on an entire ship of men, but none of you can carry a girl up a ladder. Kiyoshi rolled his eyes. I'm afraid to hurt her, Olivia said, brushing Nami's sweaty bangs out of her face. Kiyoshi sighed as he lifted Nami so that she hung over his shoulder. He climbed up and out of the hatch and stood on the metal exterior of the underwater ship. He waited for the girls to come up and get off the ship and onto the dock before passing Nami back. Thank you, May said, looping Nami's arm around her neck. She put her arm around her waist to support her. Just walk, Kiyoshi pointed. They all said, heading for the building which Kiyoshi's underling was standing outside of. A girl waited patiently beside him, until she saw the condition of Nami, then she rushed forward and helped her inside. This is the roughest batch you brought it, she said to Kiyoshi. In more ways than one, Kiyoshi rubbed his wrist again. She caught the movement and spotted his wrists. I'll deal with that later, she told him, kissing his cheek. I'd appreciate it, he told her. Chika watched in disgust, wondering how a girl could love a guy that kidnapped other girls for a living. Was she going to get brainwashed too? What are all these bandages? The girl asked as they entered the building. She got hurt quite a bit, Tsubaki explained. There was the explosion. The battles, naturally, ran added. That dial thing, Kira reminded them. She's been through a lot, Chika murmured. So I see, the girl smiled gently at them all. Well, you all must have. But there's no more need to worry. This place is better than you think it is. Farunmei Island? Kira sneered. Yeah, I bet it is. Captain. Ship approaching. One of his men came running in different from the one that had sought out the doctor. Marine? Kiyoshi asked. Pirate, he panted for breath, tired from running. I fear that they're the Straw Hats. Thank goodness, Tsubaki murmured. Chika, Ran and Kira agreed as Kiyoshi rushed out the door. Landho, Frankie called from the crow's nest, hurrying down. I saw it, Farunmei Island, it's just ahead. Luffy, get back here and lie down, Chopper called as Luffy came out on deck. He breathed heavily. I want to see Nami. I want to make sure she's safe. We will shortly, Usopp assured him. You need rest, we'll get Nami back for you. I need her back. Luffy held on tightly to the railing as they tried to drag him back. With a sudden loss of strength, he snapped back into Usopp and Chopper. Hancock came out of the girls' quarters, and watched as they pulled Luffy back through the dining room. It was the first time she'd shown her face to any of them in 2 days. Despite hearing of Luffy's sickness, she still felt heartbroken, but she would rescue those girls. They deserved to be free and happy. Perhaps she'd even take them back to Amazon Lily if they so wished. But somehow she wished that Nami had been taken to some other island. She just wasn't one of the girls that Hancock was willing to save. Chapter 18. There it was. Everyone except for Chopper, Luffy and Hancock were standing at the bow of the ship, watching as the island steadily grew closer. The sun sat just above the horizon. They were glad the rain had stopped. It definitely made the mood brighter this way, for the most part. But they were all growing anxious. They just wanted to have their Nakama back, and nothing would be able to stop their forces until Nami was back on the Thousand Sunny. I can't wait any longer, Sanji said, grabbing Frankie's shoulder. Let's coup de burst. We can't, we might hit the island. The paddles are already going full speed, Frankie said, though he wished they could go faster as well. Yo ho ho, this is killing me. Brook laughed, but I'm already dead, yo ho ho. This isn't the time for a skeleton joke. Mitsuki glared at him before turning back to the island. I just want my sister and Nami back. Robin placed a hand on Mitsuki's shoulder to reassure her. We'll get them back. Nami won't go down so easily. Usopp agreed. Nami's strong. Mitsuki bit her lip and stared down at the water and breaking against the bow. She hoped that they were okay. Nami she felt like she could be less worried about, but her sister, she'd been there for a year. Who knows what they'd done to her? Was she okay? Was she already broken? Nami SWA, and, we're coming to save you, Sanji shouted to the island. Nami SWA, on. She's probably in a jail and can't hear you, Zoro muttered. Do you have to be so negative? Sanji turned on him. I'm negative. Zoro raised an eyebrow. Who the hell spent his entire nights in tears thinking that she's dead? You want to die for spreading lies like that? Sanji faced him head on. As if you, stop it, Mitsuki shouted, reaching up and hitting both of their heads together. She placed her hands on her hip and glared at the two of them. Are you guys like this all the time? Can't you get along in a situation like this? They all smirked at the miniature Nami. Sometimes it was unreal the similar traits the two shared. If they all didn't know better, they would have sworn that Nami and Mitsuki were long-lost siblings. But Mitsuki had been with her sister up until the previous year. After a moment, they all turned back to Farunmei Island and sighed, nearly in unison. This is unbearable, Mitsuki murmured, leaning her head on the railing. It doesn't feel like we're going fast at all. They all agreed. Silence. Screw it, I'll swim there, Zoro said, standing up onto the railing. Then I'll run there. Sanji also stood atop the railing beside Zoro. I'll beat you, Zoro told him. Like hell you will, Sanji sneered. Number 7 can't beat number 1, Zoro muttered before leaping into the water. Are you still going on about that? Sanji shouted at him. Sanji, Brook, go, Usopp said. Sanji realized what Zoro had just done. He jumped over the edge and took off, running across the water. He wouldn't lose to Zoro. It was bad enough he had been on an island with a real woman. As if Sanji would let him beat him at anything. Damn Marimo, don't get lost. That's right, Brook can run on water too, Frankie said. Yo ho ho, that's because I'm all bones, Brook laughed. He tipped his hat in a gentleman-like way before he, too, followed suit after Zoro and Sanji. Both men were running and swimming their hardest, but neither one could pull further ahead of the other. In a breeze Brook passed both men. You're right, that's the Straw Hats' flag, Kyoshi said, looking through binoculars out the lighthouse window. What should we do? His first mate asked from the staircase. Prepare the island's army, but have them on standby. We'll see how they handle this first, whether they'll pay the ransom or not, Kyoshi ordered. Lock all the girls up in the hospital's basement. We don't want them interfering. Yes, Captain, his first mate hurried down the stairs to the Dendenmushi. Back at the hospital Tsubaki and Chika were helping the doctor tend to Nami. All the other girls sat outside the room as to not get in the way. They were all worried about Nami, but were relieved that Hana had slipped away at some point. It was one less thing to worry about. Infection, most likely, the doctor said as she peeled the bandages away. What happened, once more? That's from the explosion, Tsubaki said. I think the wood scratched her. The other wounds are from fighting the ship's crew. There are a few splinters in there, she said as she scraped away the scab, and looked over the wound. Tweezers, please, the girl said, holding her palm out. Chika picked them up and handed them to her. As gently as she could. The doctor removed the splinters. So this is from the ship's cargo? Yeah, Chika nodded. Well, let's hope the infection is only bacterial, the doctor said, setting the tweezers down as the door opened. Girls got to come with us, the man said at the door. But, you can go, the doctor reassured them. I'll take good care of her. Thank you, Tsubaki tried to remember if she'd ever been given a name. Realizing this the doctor smiled. Sorry, my name is Yuko, Mitsuki told Robin. Her name is Yuko. Sun and the moon, huh, Robin commented. Mitsuki smiled sadly. My sister and I didn't quite get along when she was home. We fought all the time, and then there was the problem with the boy. I liked having a crush on her, but at the end of the day, no matter what may happen, she's my sister. I want her back. Yo ho ho, I feel like I've seen this before, Brook laughed at the surrounding men. Well, if I had eyes to see with, yo ho ho. He's a skeleton, the men whispered amongst one another. A skeleton. Where is she? Zoro called out to the army, soaking wet, his sword half drawn. Sanji stood beside him, and Brook was on his other side. Where is Nami? Sanji corrected. You can't just barge onto an island and assume they know who you're talking about. Oi, just shut up. Zoro turned on him, an angry vein ticking in his temple. Where's the ransom money? Kyoshi asked. Does this mean we'll be taking her by force? Sanji asked. We just want the ransom money, Kyoshi said simply. We're not giving you shit, Sanji shouted at him. Why should we pay for something that already belongs to us? Zoro asked. Nami is not a thing. Sanji kicked Zoro. Oi, Zoro pulled out his sword and pointed it at the cook. How dare number 7 even consider touching number 1? Lay off, Sanji said. My money's on the guy with the katana, a few people in the army whispered. Yo ho ho, Brook laughed, held up his cane between the two men and stepped forward to speak. If you would please just let us see our precious nakama. No money, no deal, Kyoshi said, turning and walking away. Zoro, Sanji and Brook all smirked. Did you hear that? Zoro asked before placing his katana in his mouth. He unsheathed his other two simultaneously. He gripped them tightly, and the orange glow of the rising sun glinted off their smooth surface. That's definitely Zoro, the army whispered. 3 katana, so cool. Not that I have ears to hear with, Brook gripped his cane with both hands, ready to draw his shikomizu. It's because he's a skeleton, they commented quietly. Sounded like a proclamation of war. Sanji lit his cigarette, covering the flame with his hand to guard against the breeze that swept over them. No one said anything for a moment. This guy looks like a pervert, someone whispered finally. The rest muttered their agreement. Oi! Sanji shouted at them. He turned on Zoro, "Don't nod with them, I'm not a pervert." Yo-ho-ho, Brook grinned, ignoring Sanji's ranting. "You better put on a good fight," Zoro said, the words still understandable around the hilt of the katana. He took a step forward, and looked them all over. "Otherwise there's no way that we believe that you were able to kidnap our nakama." "Luffy," I called. I turned on the spot, wondering how I'd ended up in a jungle after finally being back on the ship. One moment he was in my arms and the next he had disappeared. No matter which direction I faced, all I could see were large green leaves. "Luffy." Hancock stepped out from behind the leaves as I turned once more. She took me by surprise and I stumbled back, falling in a mud puddle. "Oh, Hancock," I greeted her. "Thank goodness. Help me get back to the ship, please." "I hate you." Her eyes were cold, as if they were constructed of stone. "You dare say you don't like him, when it's more than obvious that you do?" I didn't know at that time, I told her, trying to stand up, but I was sinking deeper into the puddle. No, not a mud puddle, quicksand. I tried to free my hands, but I just sunk deeper and deeper the more I struggled. "Hancock, help me." "This is what you deserve," Hancock said, holding her hand straight out to the side. A familiar hand reached from behind the foliage and took it gently. Slowly their fingers intertwined and the owner of the hand stepped forth. "Finally, Luffy and I can get married." And there he stood, dressed in his red shirt and blue shorts. His hat was placed on his head, and it didn't budge even when a fierce wind blew by. His face remained in his silly grin, but it almost seemed fake. "Luffy, help me," I said, ignoring Hancock. Luffy's face broke off, revealing a meaner-looking Luffy, similar to the one that fought hard against an enemy, but he reminded her of how he had stood up for Hancock. "Sorry Nami," Luffy shrugged. "Hancock means more to me than you do." "Luffy," I shouted as they turned on the spot and disappeared into the jungle. "No, stop, help me, please, Luffy." I struggled more, trying to free myself, but it felt like an impossible feat. I wanted to run after them and demand an explanation. But I was afraid I wouldn't get one. I didn't like this. I didn't like it at all. "It's not good to move her like this," the doctor said to Kiyoshi. "She needs to lie down and rest. Why don't you just turn her over to her crew?" He didn't reply, just continued to carry Nami through the jungle towards a cave where her crew wouldn't find her. They had taken the back door and the minor streets to the town's edge to escape the growing battle. "This isn't like you," she said after a moment. "Does the island need money that badly?" Again, he didn't speak. "Kiyoshi," she said, a little more firmly. "This girl reminds me of my sister," Kiyoshi said finally. "So you didn't kidnap her because she was being abused by her friends and family, or didn't have a place to fit in, the way you usually do?" She didn't look happy. He turned to face her in the entrance of the cave. At the time, she looked like she was ready to end her life the way my sister did. The girl placed her hand on Kiyoshi's shoulder. "They came to save her. Doesn't that count for anything?" He frowned, shrugging as if he didn't know. "You're risking the men's lives by doing this," she said. "It's bad enough you lost the majority of your crew this time around." "They didn't pay the ransom." He turned, laying Nami down gently on the ground and rolled a boulder out of the way. Behind that boulder was a room with a bed, a desk and herbs. "Money isn't equivalent to love." She placed her hand on his cheek, looking at him adoringly. "Don't you know that by now?" "I feel like I need compensation." He held her hand there with his, and closed his eyes. "Am I doing the wrong thing, Yuko?" Yuko smiled at him, standing up on her tiptoes to kiss his nose. "What you're doing for those girls in the village is a great thing. Providing a place to live where they interact with people in the same situation. Hoping to reverse the pain and damage they accumulated over who knows how long. But just because it's a good thing for most, doesn't mean that it's a good thing for all." She stepped back and waited as he picked the pirate girl up and walked her to the bed. "Keep that in mind." "Take care of her," Kiyoshi said, wrapping his arms around his fiancée's petite body and kissing her forehead. "I will," Yuko said, watching him as he walked to the entrance. "Hey, Yuko." He turned partially with his hand on the boulder. "Do you ever miss your island?" Her smile turned a little sad. "Only my little sister. I hope she's doing well." "I see," he said, turning his head away. "Well, I'm going." "Be careful," she called after him. As he rolled the boulder in front of the opening, he didn't say a word. He took a shaky breath and looked at the roof of the cave. He ran a slightly quivering hand through his hair. He had been so sure of himself earlier that he was doing it for her benefit, but he couldn't help but wonder. Was he doing the right thing? I hope Nami's okay. Tsubaki paced back and forth across the room in the basement. It was a cellar, so it was slightly chilly, but they were promised that they weren't being locked in here forever. The doctor promised she'd look after her. Chika sounded like she was forcing herself to think that way. She and the others sat in a circle on the floor. It's crazy up there. Ren stared up at the ceiling. It sounds like there's a war going on. Maybe there is, if the Straw Hat Pirates are here, May murmured. Do you think they're scary? Do you think they'll save us too? To be honest, Olivia began, I'm not sure if I want to be saved. I wasn't happy on my island initially to begin with. I was going to be married off soon to this awful guy, too. The worst. He was lazy and mean, but had rich parents. My parents always hated being poor. The kidnappers mentioned something about a random, right? There's no way my parents could save me anyway, if they cared enough. Me being gone is one less mouth to feed. My parents hate me, Nana interjected. I don't know why, but I can feel it in the way they look at me. We weren't poor, but I doubt they'd try to scrape the money together. Our island feared Ren and I because we were twins, Ren said. The island we lived on was highly religious. Twins were a bad omen. My parents moved to a house far away from the village we'd been born in, but a few years ago they died, and Ren and I were left unprotected. They don't let us shop at the markets, don't let us walk through town or go to school. But the most recent occurrence before we were kidnapped was the burning of our home. I can honestly say this is probably one of the better things that had happened in my life, right Ren? Her twin nodded. Has everyone had such a hard time? Chika asked. They all gave brief nods. What awful lives the beautiful lead, and the devils saved their souls. Kira rolled her eyes, irony at its greatest. It's scary to be stripped of the only world you've ever known, May admitted. Nami must have a lot of faith in her nakama. And that faith has brought them to her, Ren said. She closed her eyes. It sounds like a war between countries up there. I wonder how many crewmates she has. We never did ask, did we? Tsubaki murmured. It would have been interesting to hear. Nana gave a weak smile. What do we know about her, except for the fact that she's a pirate? She has huge, Kira murmured, feeling her chest. It doesn't matter what we know of her past, Chika said. What matters is what we know now. And from fighting beside her, I can say I trust her with my life. We all already did, Tsubaki smiled, and it was a decision well placed. Lower the anchor, Robin said to Frankie, jumping over the railing and landing on the dock below. Robin, I want to come. Mitsuki shouted. No, stay on the ship with Luffy and Chopper. Robin pointed in the direction of the medical room. I'll bring back Nami and find your sister. Take this then, Mitsuki leaned over the railing, stretching out an arm. In her hand was the picture she had of her sister. Robin used her power to produce arms and grab it. Mitsuki hadn't actually seen Robin's power before, so she dropped the picture by accident. Ah. I got it, Robin said, quickly grabbing it with a new hand. The girl in the background, right? The young girl nodded. LL, Robin said. Frankie leapt over the side to catch up. He and Robin took off down the pier towards where a building tumbled down, screaming both male and female should she be worried. Hancock also appeared on the dock below, walking, not running like Frankie and Robin. Mitsuki frowned at her as she went before turning and heading to where Luffy and Chopper was. Yeah, there had to be no one she hated more than the Empress. Well, except for the pirates that kidnapped her sister, of course. Though there wasn't too much of a difference in the end. Watch it, someone said, bumping into Hancock. I'm sorry, Hancock feigned being flustered. No, it's me that should be apologizing, instant transformation. This was how it should have been with Luffy. But if that was how it was with Luffy, Hancock wouldn't have respected him, let alone loved him in the first place. You wouldn't happen to know where they're holding the new captives, would you? Hancock asked innocently. Basement of the hospital, her new slave spoke without hesitation. Let me show you the way, I'll protect you from swords and stray bullets. How sweet, she cooed. Lead on. He showed her the way, staring at her beauty the entire time. And while she usually enjoyed that people fawned over her curves and flawless skin, she couldn't bring herself to be too happy. There was a hole in her heart, and she had no idea how to fix it. But she had a vague idea of what could help. Chapter 19. So pretty, beautiful, May said in awe, and the other girls murmured their agreement as they saw Hancock standing there in the light, their guard and another guy practically on their knees and kissing her feet. It was like they were under her control. Kira didn't like that. "Are you a member of the Straw Hats?" Chica asked. "You could say that." Hancock looked around the room, finding nothing more than the faces of strangers. "Where's—" She paused before she forced the name out. "Where's Nami?" "She's not in the room above us," Ren asked, looking over at Hancock. Ran and Ren had stopped trusting people so long ago that Hancock's power didn't affect them. Chica acted more on instinct than anything else, and there was just something that she didn't like about this woman that stood before them. "There's no one in this building except for you 8 right here," Hancock said. "When did you guys arrive on the island?" "Just this morning. Nami's sick, so the doctor was tending to her," Chica said. She looked at Tsubaki, "Right?" Tsubaki didn't reply, just stared, transfixed, at Hancock. "Tsubaki," Chica said. Tsubaki drew her eyes away from the Empress. "Sorry, what did you say?" "Nami was sick." "Oh, yeah, she was," Tsubaki said, staring beside the Empress instead of directly at her. Something was weird about her. It was an infection from an explosion on the underwater ship. "Sounds serious," Hancock said coldly. "You don't sound very concerned," Chica said, standing up. "Ran, Tsubaki, come on. Let's go find where they've taken Nami." "No, leave it up to me," Hancock said. "I'll find her." "Are you really a Straw Hat pirate?" Chica asked, more firmly this time. "I'm not part of the actual crew, but I'm on their side." Hancock looked the girls up and down. "Those wounds, they're from kicking ass on the ship we were on. Nami led us into battle. We probably could have beaten them too, had Nami not been sick," she said, crossing her arms and looking Hancock up and down. There was really something about her that she just didn't like. An aura that rolled off of her. It was sort of like Hannah's aura, dark and ominous. "Battle wounds," the girls could almost hear the relief in Hancock's wounds. "Do they hurt?" "It's proof that we tried our hardest," Ran said, turning her gaze back up to the ceiling. "Much like those guys up there. The Straw Hats, I mean." Ren and Tsubaki agreed. "You all want to return to your islands, don't you?" Hancock said after a moment. "I'm the Empress of an island on the other side of the red line. It's all women." "I'll go anywhere with you," May said, and the guys on either side of her as well as Nana, Olivia and Sake nodded enthusiastically. "Please take us with you." "We'll be fine on our own," Chica said, gesturing to Tsubaki, Ren and Kira. "We'll find our own place in this world." "Have it your way," Hancock said. She debated turning them to stone, but Luffy would scold her. She turned on her heel, gesturing for the obedient girls to follow her. She left the door wide open as they all left, but the last 5 girls remained there. "I have a bad feeling," Tsubaki voiced the way they all felt. "We should hurry up and find Nami," Kira said. Chica wondered how long that would take. Nami could be anywhere. How long had they been sitting in that room in the basement? Yes, they should find Nami, or at least the real Straw Hats. "Stop cutting buildings in half," Frankie shouted at Zoro as another house went down. "There are still people in there." "They'll live," Zoro grunted. "We're not invincible like you," the 5 men that he was fighting yelled. "We have wives and children in that hut." "Wives? Children?" Sanji kicked a guy far out into the jungle. "You, pirates who kidnap girls from all over the sea, dare take wives and have children. You got us all wrong," one of the men said, backing away slowly and fell to the ground. "We don't just kidnap random girls." "No, you kidnap beauties." Sanji looked down at him. "You disgust me." "Hold on," Robin interrupted. "I want to hear what he has to say." "Yes, Robin Schwa," and Sanji said, dancing away to go and fight someone else. "Speak," Robin said, producing a hand between his legs, "or else I'll make sure you never have children again." "Robin, you're so cruel," Frankie winced at the memory from Water 7. "He's wrong, we don't just kidnap beauties," the guy said, never taking his eyes off that hand, backing up until his back touched a wall. "We take girls that don't appear to be enjoying life on their islands, girls that have tough lives, girls that have been through impossible situations, girls that have been raped or can't trust the people around them. We take them and bring them to this island. We rebuild their trust and give them the will to live." "Are you telling the truth?" Robin's extra hand flexed, making the guy nearly piss his pants. What guy would lie in a situation like this? He closed his eyes tightly, and when they opened, both the hand and Robin were gone. Zoro, stop. Robin placed a hand on his shoulder. These aren't bad people. They still took Nami, Zoro said, accidentally knocking down part of another building. He didn't bat an eyelash when Frankie and the men started yelling at him again. I think this could be solved easily. Robin stepped in front of him. He frowned, but straightened up and sheathed his swords. She smiled at him, and murmured, "Thank you," before shouting to the others, "Sanji, Brooke, Frankie, that's enough." "But Robin," Frankie said. "No, please, stop," the army was panting. "This is why we use a submarine. We don't really like fighting." "What kind of pirates are you?" Sanji asked. "Yo-ho-ho, they're bad to the bone," Brooke laughed. "Not good ones," Zoro muttered, ignoring Brooke. Absent-mindedly his hand came to rest on Robin's upper arm. Before anyone could notice, Robin slipped away from his reach. "So where's our nakama?" Robin asked. "We couldn't tell you," someone spoke up. "Captain Kiyoshi took her and the village doctor to a secret place." "Not even we know where it is," another one said. "Doctor," Robin repeated. "The pirate girl was sick," the first said again. "Arrived on the island unconscious with a high fever. We need to find her and get her to Chopper," Frankie muttered. "If he didn't need to look after Luffy, I'd say we should use his nose, but Luffy seems to be in bad condition." "I agree," Robin nodded. "So let's tear this island apart looking for her," Zoro shrugged. "They couldn't have really gotten too far." "It'd make things easier if you just paid the ransom," one man said from the back. "Captain won't believe you care for her otherwise." "I don't see why we should pay," Sanji gritted his teeth. "Why should money determine how much we care?" Frankie asked. "Most the girls that we take here never have anybody come after them." Kiyoshi stepped slowly through the crowd. "The few people that do come don't scrape up any money whatsoever to pay the ransom. They don't even try." "Nami would shoot us if we used the money like that on her," Zoro said. Frankie and Brooke agreed, nodding their heads. "She'd add it to the amounts we owe her and increase the interest." "We're willing to fight for her," Robin said. "Doesn't that mean anything?" "Most of the girls come here abused," Kiyoshi said. "Violence means nothing on this island. Now if that's all, please turn around and leave until you're willing to." "No," Robin said. "But if you're not willing to hand Nami over, then can you tell me about a girl named Yuko? I have a picture here." Kiyoshi took the picture and looked it over. It was clearly the fiancée he had just left back in the cave in the jungle, but he handed it back to Robin nonetheless. "I know nothing," he lied. Yuko mixed a few herbs together, grinding them into powder. She glanced at the door, wondering if Kiyoshi would be okay. She hadn't had a moment to look at his wrists to make sure they'd be alright. She also wanted to hear what had actually occurred on the ship's other pirates out in the Grand Line. Or had there been a mutiny of sorts aboard the ship? Nami groaned on the bed, and Yuko got up to look at her. She ran a hand over her sweaty forehead and smiled sadly, placing a cold cloth there. The fever was so high. She was really beginning to wonder if it were too late to save her. But for some reason, she just felt that this girl had the strength to live through it. With a sigh, Yuko sat back down to finish preparing the medicine. Things would be better soon. Hancock was surprised to find that not a lot of girls were willing to join her. Their assumptions on the island were wrong. The girls were happy here. They had families here, jobs. Hancock couldn't understand them. All men except for Luffy were awful creatures. Disgusting even. Look at the way they fell to her feet, or kissed her hand, begging her to look their way, if only for the briefest of moments. If only it were just a glance. Hancock had made the girls and the men split up to search for a particularly hateful red-headed pirate. But there was no sign of Nami in this village. Where had they taken her? Why had they deliberately made things so difficult? A hiss came from behind her, and she turned to see Salome making his way over to her. Perfect timing, Hancock greeted him. "My sisters are nearly here, I presume." "That's good, even if not a lot of girls are going to take up my offer. But, I have a mission. Lead me to the brat." Salome's tongue slid in and out of his reptilian lips, and began leading her towards the jungle. Hancock smirked at the villagers' slyness for not even keeping her within the limits of the village. But they would have to do better than that. Kiyoshi and the island's army just stood there staring at the Straw Hat pirates. Neither was willing to step down from this standoff. A breeze swept over them, The army shifted from one foot to the other, slightly impatient. Zoro and the others barely twitched a muscle. They stood there in silence though, only cracking when one of the men in the opposing army coughed. "Well, if you don't want to fight," Zoro yawned and sat down. "We'll just stay here until you give her back." "Does anyone know how long it takes for the log post to set?" Robin asked. "We have an island that we want to go back to." "A day," someone piped up. "We can't waste time," Sanji said. Luffy really liked that island. Nami and Mitsuki seemed to enjoy it too. That's why Nami didn't steal an already set watch. "Mitsuki," Kyoshi repeated. He caught himself though, and added, "Oh, sorry." "No apology needed," Robin told him. She noted it in the back of her mind though, she would bring it up again later. "Yo-ho-ho, I hope Nami isn't all bones when we find her," Brook received Sanji's slap. "Make any more jokes like that and I'll cut your hair," Sanji threatened. "Cook-san is a perverted meanie," someone whispered. "The swords guy is amazingly cool," someone else said. "Hey, I recognize the skeleton. Isn't he that Soul King?" "No way. The Soul King? Would it be weird if I asked for an autograph after this is all over? I would kill to see him in concert." Kyoshi and Sanji both opened their mouths to say something, but suddenly a figure ran from out of nowhere, holding a knife high and aiming for Kyoshi. Instinct made someone fire a shot, and the person fell to the ground. The knife flew from the person's hands, landing out of reach. Sanji managed to catch the figure before they hit the ground, but he was scratched despite trying to help. Hannah coughed up blood, having been shot in the chest. But even as her life slowly drained from her, she glared up at all the men. How she wished she could have taken them all with her in her demise. His eyes flew open suddenly, giving Mitsuki a start. "Chopper," she called. "He's awake. Luffy's awake." Chopper hurried back in from the dining room, having been getting something for Luffy to take medicine with. "Good, he can take his medicine now." "Nami," Luffy stared into nothing as he sat up. "Nami's near. Robin and the others are getting her back," Mitsuki promised. "Here, Luffy, take this," Chopper said, handing him the medicine and food. Luffy took one look at it and tossed it aside. "Oi, Luffy. I'm going to go find Nami." Luffy grabbed his hat off Chopper's desk by stretching his arm across the room. "The others are getting her back. They just have to deal with the pirates," Chopper told him. "Pirates," Luffy said. He frowned. "Nami's in danger." "No, Luffy," Chopper grabbed his burning arm, but it was too late. Luffy had it in his feverish mind that Nami was in danger, and now no one could stop him. He practically threw Chopper across the room in a similar manner to the medicine before racing out the door. "We need to go after him," Chopper said. "He's too sick to be doing things like this." "Let's go." Mitsuki had no objections, she wanted to find her sister. Hancock stood outside the cave. "How quaint." Salome hissed in reply, leading her into the cave and towards the boulder that blocked the room. "Behind this?" she asked. Salome nodded, wrapping around Hancock as she swung her leg back. She kicked the boulder out of the way, surprising Yuko. She accidentally spilt some of the medicine she had just finished preparing. "Who are you?" the doctor asked. Marrow, Hancock said, turning the doctor to stone without blinking an eye. She crossed the room to the bed and looked down at Nami. Her cheeks were flushed and she was breathing heavily. She was definitely sick. This made it easier. It meant there would be no struggle, because she couldn't put up a fight. Hancock took out a dagger, gripping it tightly in her hand. She admired the clean blade, but there was something she would admire so much more. A blade splashed with blood, and Luffy all to herself. Chapter 20. Hannah was breathing heavily on the ground, and at first all anyone could do was stand there and stare down at her. "We need a doctor," one of the island's men shouted. "Brook, go get Chopper," Robin said, kneeling down and putting pressure on the wound. "Go get him, quick." Brook said, turning to run down the dock, but was stopped short with Luffy, Chopper and Mitsuki all running towards him. "Chopper, we need your help," Zoro said. "But Luffy," Chopper said as their captain slammed into a member of the army. "Hey!" the person shouted at him, but Luffy kept on going, breathing heavily. "This is more important," Robin shouted. "This girl will die if something's not done right now." "Nami!" Luffy shouted. "Nami, oi, Luffy!" Zoro called after him. "Stop, you should be resting, you're sick." Nami, Luffy shouted, shooting onto the roof of a building. Go get him, Chopper said, getting out his medical supplies. He's burning up. We don't want him to hurt himself. Did you see that? The villagers whispered. It can talk. What a weird tanuki, another one whispered. I'm a reindeer, Chopper shouted at them. I'll get him, Sanji told Chopper, running at the building. He leapt up, but missed as Luffy shot to another roof. Oi, Luffy, stand still. Nami, that's your captain? Kyoshi asked, kneeling beside Hana's injured body. Luffy, Sanji finally grabbed him, but was thrown off the building and into the wall of another one. The building fell in on Sanji. Zoro, go help him. Robin looked up at him. What's wrong with him? Kyoshi watched as the swordsman ran at the boy atop the highest building in the town. He's sick, Mitsuki said. But now isn't the time for that. Chopper, is there anything I can do? Mitsuki, can you run and get a medicine from my infirmary? Chopper asked frantically. It's a blue powder on the top shelf. Mitsuki, Kyoshi mouthed her name as she nodded and ran back to the ship. Luffy, Zoro shouted up at him. Luffy, I'll take you to Nami, so come down here. In a heartbeat, Luffy was in front of Zoro, fingers digging into his shoulders. Where's Nami? Take me to her now, she's in danger. She's fine, Luffy, Zoro said. She's fine. I want to see her. Luffy turned away from him, but Zoro now had his strong grip on Luffy's wrist and wouldn't let him go. Zoro, let go. Luffy's eyes went dark. Luffy, we'll find her. After Chopper helps the girl, we'll use his nose to find her, Zoro said. I got the medicine, Mitsuki shouted as she ran back to Chopper's side. Zoro, Luffy's expression changed into a look of helplessness. Please, let me go. No, Zoro said firmly. Suddenly Luffy's fist flew into Zoro's face. I said to let me go. Those are the Straw Hat Pirates? Tsubaki asked, peeking out the window. Who's that on the ground? And I don't know. Ran's voice drifted off. She glanced over at the other three girls. Do you think Chika will be alright on her own? She said she wouldn't confront Hancock, so we're just going to have to trust her, Kira said. It's a good thing you recognized her, Ran said. A Shichibukai, huh? How scary. I told you I want to be a Marine, Kira replied. If I don't know that much, I'm not going to be a very good Marine, now will I? I wouldn't know, Tsubaki said. I don't know the requirements for being a Marine. They seem to be at a ceasefire, Ran said. Should we go out to them? What if our kidnappers get angry? Tsubaki asked. Shouldn't we trust the Straw Hats to protect us? Ren looked at them all, like Nami would. Ren smiled at her twin, But what if that captain is stronger than the Straw Hats? Tsubaki nodded towards Kyoshi. You saw how easily he and the last men we fought threw Nami and us around. They were doing fine before, they'll be doing fine when complications occur, Kira said. Let's go. What else can they do to us? Oh, I could think of a few things, Tsubaki muttered, rubbing her arm uncomfortable. It's for Nami, Ran said hopefully. I never said I wasn't going. Tsubaki straightened up. I'm just worried if it were going to be all in vain again. I don't think taking action to stand up for someone or something can be considered in vain, Ren murmured. You're right, Tsubaki smiled gently. Let's go. They went to the front door, throwing it open and running outside. Nami. They could hear shouting now. It was a painful and strangled voice that called out. Whoever it was sounded like he was desperate. These people had to be the Straw Hats. Then they saw him. The captain of the Straw Hats, Monkey D. Luffy and Roronoa Zoro were standing a bit further down the road than they were. The look in their eyes as they just stared at each other was dark, almost murderous. But Monkey D. Luffy was panting heavily, in a way similar to Nami's before they had realized she was really sick. It didn't feel right to interrupt the two of them, so they looked over to where the other Straw Hat Pirates stood. They still surrounded the injured. It's Hana, Ren said, running forward. What? Tsubaki asked, as they followed her. On the ground it's Hana, Ren said for her twin. They stopped running when they came across Kyoshi, the Straw Hat Pirates and an animal. Only the animal was trying to treat Hana's wounds. They were utterly confused. You, Kyoshi began. What happened? Kira asked, grabbing his shirt collar. Mademoiselles. Sanji greeted them happily. He took in their appearances and began to get a bloody nose. They were beauties indeed. He was starting to feel like he knew why Kyoshi kidnapped them. She attacked Captain Kiyoshi, and out of reflex a gun was shot. Kiyoshi's first mate spoke up. We hadn't known it was one of the girls. Liar! Tsubaki shouted. Captain? Mitsuki murmured, glancing up at Kiyoshi from her position beside Robin. No, that's the way it really happened, Robin told them. I take it you're recently kidnapped. They all said, suddenly nervous under the woman's gaze, but they slipped closer to the Straw Hat ranks nonetheless. I think we can move her somewhere else now, Chopper said, wiping his brow. He can talk, Tsubaki squeaked. Devil's fruit, Frankie said. Yo ho ho, I've eaten one too. Brooke laughed. Sanji, help her. Robin looked up at him from where she knelt beside Hannah on the ground. Let's move her to the ship. We have a small hospital right over there. Kiyoshi got up. We should have a stretcher there too. I'll go get it. He got up and was about to walk away. Where's my sister? Mitsuki shouted with her eyes squeezed shut as she forced the words out. She wasn't sure if she wanted to know the answer. Your sister? Kiyoshi turned around to face her. You took her from my island over a year ago. Mitsuki cried out. Her name is Yuko. If you've harmed her, or Nami, for that matter all. Kiyoshi didn't know how to reply. Aren't you going to ask her to pay the ransom too? Sanji muttered, striding over to him. Or was that a special privilege, just for us? Your sister's fine, Kiyoshi ignored Sanji. And she's currently treating a sick pirate. Nami, Luffy called, racing over to the group. He was still breathing heavily, and behind him, Zoro held a hand to a bloody nose. Where is she? Where's my nakama? Luffy, calm down, Robin said to him. Where is my nakama? Luffy shook Kiyoshi, his hands holding the other captain's upper arms. Tell me. Do we care enough about her yet? Zoro asked, using the back of his hand to wipe away some of the blood. It left a streak across his cheek, making him look both ridiculous and that much more intimidating. Tell us where Nami is, Frankie, Brooke and Mitsuki said. You treat her roughly, and you expect me to just give her back just like that? Yes. Luffy said. His dulled eyes became dark, because if you don't, and something happens to her, I will seriously kill you. Zoro and Robin exchanged glances. Luffy always set out to win a battle, but never actually killed or threatened. Luffy fell over on the street. Luffy, Mitsuki said, rushing to his side. His fever is even higher now. I'm fine. Luffy pushed himself back up to his feet. Can we please just move this girl? Chopper called over everyone. This girl isn't out of the danger zone yet? She had gone into the cave. Not that Chika knew why the Empress had gone into the cave. Was that where Nami and the doctor were now? Were they going to be okay, facing the Shichibukai? Chika's heart raced in fear of just what could be happening in there. She didn't like the ideas that came to mind. Should she move in closer? Maybe actually enter the cave to see just what was going on? Or would that be too dangerous? But Nami's sick. She might need help. If the Empress wanted to harm her, there would be no question about it. Nami would definitely need help. What to do? Chika shifted impatiently from one foot to another. She really wanted to make sure things were okay. Hopefully the girls would be arriving shortly with the Straw Hats. Or maybe that would be too late. Chopper was making sure to take good care of Hannah. She was still unconscious, though, and it was touch and go. Now tell me where Nami is. Luffy persisted outside the door. If you laid a single hand on her. I haven't, Kiyoshi assured him, but I think you should get treated too. You're sweating bullets. No, bullets don't work on me, Luffy said, the sickness messing with how he interpreted things. I just want to see Nami. Didn't you make her upset? Kiyoshi asked. The last time I saw a girl as depressed as your supposed nakama, she ended up killing herself. I won't let another girl go through the same thing. Nami is not weak. Luffy punched him, only hard enough to make him stumble back. You know nothing about her, don't act like you know her. Nami is strong, and brave, and intelligent. She tells me about mysterious things, and navigates our ship. Her dream is to map the entire world. And I want to see my sister. Mitsuki turned around the corner while she'd been eavesdropping around. Take us to where they are. Kiyoshi felt like he was at a loss. Mitsuki looked so similar to Yuko, except for Yuko had golden hair rather than black like Mitsuki's. I'll lead you to them, Kiyoshi said finally. My sister better not be broken, Mitsuki warned him. Why would your sister be broken? He asked. Before you stole my sister from our island, You dropped off another girl?" Mitsuki glared at him. She wouldn't talk or respond to anyone or anything, and ended up killing herself, days after she returned home. "Callie?" Kiyoshi asked. The husband she had taken on this island had died out at sea. She returned home because she couldn't bear to remain here with her memories of her lost love. I guess in the end, no matter where she was, the pain was unbearable. "I don't believe you," Mitsuki told him bluntly. "Perhaps you will shortly," he told her. "Nami, now," Luffy said, dragging Kiyoshi to the door. Mitsuki hurried to catch up to the two of them. The Straw Hat captain managed to get Kiyoshi to run rather than walk. Mitsuki didn't have the endurance like the both of them though, and started to fall behind quickly, until Luffy knelt down suddenly and waited for Mitsuki to climb onto his back. "You're sick," Mitsuki reminded him. "Do you want to see your sister?" Luffy asked, already knowing the answer. "This way is faster." Still hesitant, Mitsuki climbed onto his back. It was weird to see things moving so much faster than she was used to as they ran. And Luffy was sure running fast. She held the dagger high in the air above her head. What was holding her back? She wanted Luffy to be all hers. But this wench was an obstacle she couldn't handle. So what if she was currently sick and helpless? All's fair in love and war. Isn't that what they say? So killing her now, like this, could hardly be called cowardly. "FFY, Nami whispered. Hancock gripped the dagger higher above her head. How dare she say his name in a tone like that? Desperate and needing, calling for him and hoping that he'd come. But he would come, wouldn't he? He'd come, and see the mess that Hancock had made. Luffy would give her an evil glare that would pierce her heart further and break it into millions of pieces, unless she blamed it on the doctor. The story would be that the doctor suddenly started acting funny, and stabbed Nami in a sleepwalking state of mind. Nami really did look helpless. Her cheeks were flushed and her blankets were beginning to wrap around her as she twisted and turned. She drummed her fingers over the hilt of the dagger, trying to gain the same momentum that she had entered with. "Luffy," Nami murmured, then louder. "Luffy." Hancock lowered her hand slowly, letting the dagger run parallel to her leg as she just stared down at her love rival. "Luffy." Nami's eyebrows knitted together, then pain washed over her. Her eyes fluttered open, and searched the ceiling before they came to rest on Hancock, but then they closed again, and her breathing grew heavy. This was probably a job better fit for the Tanuki doctor rather than some enemy doctor. "Luffy," Nami called out once more. "Don't, I to you." Hancock lifted the dagger high and swung down hard, drawing blood instantly. She pulled the weapon out and let it drop to the floor, and it landed with a soft thump on the dirt floor. Blood dripped from the blade onto the ground. Hancock knelt by the bed and cried out in frustration. How could she put Luffy through that again? Through that excruciating pain of losing a person, a precious nakama. She couldn't, she decided, watching the blood slid down her wrist from the wound in the back of her hand. She wished she was as cold and heartless as she used to be, before Luffy came along. Jobs like this would be so much easier. She could kick kittens and dogs, and the occasional tanuki, all without having to worry about whether Luffy would be happy with that. Hancock?" Nami asked. Hancock looked up, to see Nami watching her with sick and listless eyes. "I never thought I'd be glad to see you." "Let's get back to the others," Hancock told her. Nami gave the weakest of smiles, closing her eyes before it disappeared from her lips. Hancock turned the doctor back to normal before she picked Nami up, carrying the enemy. How ironic. "Are you one of her nakama?" the doctor asked, not realizing that she'd been turned to a statue, only that something felt a bit off. "We're rivals in love," Hancock replied, "but I'm calling it temporary truth. I'm taking her back to the ship." Yuko smiled, following her out of the cave. "She'll probably be glad to be back." "She will be," Chika said from the entrance of the cave. "I'm glad you're both all right." "Sorry for disappearing," Yuko apologized. "I'm just glad that." "Nami," Luffy's voice came from in front of them. Hancock's gaze shot up to look at him. He looked incredibly relieved to see her. Hancock's heart ached, but she didn't regret her actions. Luffy ran forward, stopping in front of Hancock and taking Nami into his own arms, despite being sick. "Nami." "Luffy," Nami blinked up at him, still a bit groggy. She wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered right beside her ear. "I'm sorry." Luffy's knees gave out below him, but Sanji appeared and caught Nami before she hit the ground. Zoro grabbed Luffy. "Thank you," Zoro muttered to Hancock, adjusting Luffy on his back, "for finding Nami for us." "Thank you, Empress Sama," Sanji said. "Mitsuki," Yuko's eyes widened at the sight of her sister. "You look kind of happy for someone that's been kidnapped." Mitsuki didn't even bother trying to hide the tears in her eyes before she turned and ran back for the village. Yuko looked at Kiyoshi helplessly. "Go," Kiyoshi told her, though he wanted her to stay. If she ran after her sister, would her heart waver? Would she want to return back to her home? Before running off though, Yuko kissed Kiyoshi. As she pulled back, she murmured, looking up into his eyes. "Let's go back," Zoro said. Sanji and Kiyoshi began to walk in the same direction Mitsuki and Yuko had run in. Hancock watched them for a moment before reluctantly following after them. Yes, she made the right choice. Luffy would probably be happier this way. Not that she was going to give up on the idea of marrying him, of course. Chapter 21. Mitsuki, wait, Yuko jogged after her sister, Mitsuki. Mitsuki spun on her heel. "Do you know how worried I was? You were taken from the island. What was I supposed to think, except that you're in danger? And this is what I find? That you're okay?" "Mitsuki, it's not what you think." Yuko tried to take a step forward, but Mitsuki threw her hands up between them, making her sister stop. "If you were okay this entire time, you could have ridden or something. Do you know what I've been through? How many scars and bruises I have received, because I was trying to earn money to pay your ransom?" "You wouldn't understand," Yuko told her. "You wouldn't understand how hard it was for me before I came here." Mitsuki felt hurt. "You're right. No, I wouldn't understand, because you never tried explaining it to me." "Mitsuki," Yuko tried to grab her arm. "No, you were always like this." Mitsuki pulled away. "Always keeping to yourself, never letting anyone into your little world. How do you think that made me and Auntie feel? And here I thought you were in real danger, and that you'd miss me and everyone else, and that'd you be happy to see me. But you never cared at all, did you? You must have hated me, ever since I was born." "I never thought that way," Yuko reached out again. "Yeah, because that's how you always made me feel." Mitsuki glared her hand down. "But when you went missing, and all that was left behind was an eternal pose and a ransom note, I thought that in the end, you were still my sister, no matter how often we fought, no matter how often we disagreed." Mitsuki turned away, and she could see everybody approaching. Nami and Luffy were completely passed out. She hoped they were going to be okay. And that girl back at the docks, would she live? "You are my sister," Yuko clenched her fist to her stomach. "Yeah?" Mitsuki looked over her shoulder at Yuko, as Zoro, Sanji, Hancock, Chika and Kiyoshi grew near. "You did a poor job of showing it." "Mitsuki," Zoro took the situation in at a glance. "Let's go back to the ship." Mitsuki agreed. She didn't look at her sister as she began to walk away with the 4 Straw Hats and Hancock. She paused however, only to say, "I don't want to see your face ever again, Yuko. So do me a favor and never appear in front of me." "Are you sure that's okay?" Sanji asked as Mitsuki caught up. Mitsuki gave a half-hearted smile. "But thank you. I feel like it's my fault Nami and Luffy are in this mess. In the end, there was no point in saving my sister." "It's not your fault," Sanji told her. "No, it is," Zoro said. "Oi!" Sanji kicked him. If it weren't for her, Nami wouldn't have fallen and hit her head. Zoro adjusted Luffy on his back. "We wouldn't have had to come to this island which on the way to Nami got kidnapped, where she also got sick and made Luffy go potentially crazy. So I'm a bad kid, alright?" Mitsuki bit back tears. This isn't what she wanted to hear, even if she were thinking the exact same thing. But that didn't mean he had to voice it. "You're wrong," Nami muttered into Sanji's shoulder. She was breathing heavily, but she opened her eyes and reached out to touch Mitsuki's shoulder. "You're a good girl." "Thank you." Mitsuki took Nami's hand in hers, holding it loosely as they walked back into the village. Maybe Nami was really her sister, and she and Yuko had been switched at birth or something. Nami, Frankie and Usopp looked relieved. "You guys actually found her." "Of course we did," Sanji said. "What do you expect when that guy led us straight to her?" "Go tell Chopper we're bringing her to the ship," Zoro told them, her and Luffy both. "I'll send Robin your way too," Frankie said, heading for the building that Chopper and Hannah were currently residing in. Mitsuki led the way to the ship, climbing aboard and waiting patiently as Sanji and Zoro followed her. Hancock was right behind them. They took Nami and Luffy to the girls' quarters, not having enough beds in the infirmary. Luffy-kun looks so much more peaceful already, Mitsuki murmured, sitting beside Nami. Well, we have our nakama back, Zoro shrugged. Sanji nodded his agreement. No, it's not just that. Mitsuki ran her hand over the sheets. The corners of her lips tilted upwards. It's love. It's definitely love. You should have stopped her, Chika said as they entered the village. She wouldn't have listened to me anyway, Yuko replied solemnly. She sighed and ran a hand over her face. She's always been stubborn. She didn't let me get a word in. Chika frowned. There's always a chance to get a word in. If you're saying that, then you weren't trying hard enough. What do you know? Yuko snapped, surprising both Chika and Kiyoshi. Kiyoshi ran a hand through her hair to calm her down and planted a gentle kiss atop her head. That girl has never let me get a word in. You wouldn't understand. I wouldn't understand. What do I know? Chika repeated. You want to know what I know? That girl was desperately trying to save her older sister, traveling around the new world all by herself and stole from pirates, failing more than the time she was actually able to gain any money for her sister, which I doubt I should have to say it, is you. Chika wasn't too surprised that she was quoting Nami. You didn't write, or visit, or anything. Don't make it sound like you're the victim. That's enough for now, Kiyoshi said to Chika. We have a girl we need to heal? Who? Yuko asked, now avoiding Chika's gaze. One of the recent girls we saved, Kiyoshi said. Who? This time it was Chika that spoke. Hana, Kiyoshi said. Our resident man-hater, Chika murmured. What happened? She ran out to attack me, and one of the villagers reacted on instinct. The captain told her. The Straw Hat's doctor is looking after her now, but I'm sure you'll want to go and tend to the pirate girl and captain. Yuko said, hurrying off. Saved. Chika turned to look at him. How could you consider taking us out of the only homes, saving us? And Nami from her ship? Do you know how many complications you're giving people? Would you rather have girls kill themselves because they're outcasts, or are bullied, or have been raped? Kiyoshi asked. I've seen it happen one too many times. And that's what I'm trying to stop here. Have you ever just tried asking? Chika was disgusted with this guy. Some people deny it, he shrugged. But most girls are happy being taken here in the end. The girls that don't like it, after a month we take them back. That doesn't make what you're doing any less of a crime, Chika said before turning and walking away. She walked to the end of the dock and looked up at the Straw Hats' Jolly Roger. She wanted to go aboard and see Nami, but would that be intruding? Did they really find Nami? Tsubaki, Ren and Kira ran down the dock, followed by another woman and a skeleton. Yeah, Chika nodded. She looked like she was okay, except for being sick. That's such a relief, Tsubaki sighed. Climb aboard, Robin told them as she drew near. It's fine. Thank you, Chika said, doing so. No, thank you, for taking care of Nami for the past couple of days, Robin responded, following the girls up. Yo-ho-ho, I'm so glad I'll be able to see Nami, Brooke laughed. Not that I have eyes to see with, yo-ho-ho. You ladies are so pretty, would you mind showing me your panties? Chika hit him as he climbed aboard, but the skeleton just laughed. Where is Nami? Kira asked, looking around the lawn deck. She and Luffy are in the girls' quarters, Hancock said from the deck above. Thank you, Robin nodded up at her, going to the stairs. She entered her room to see Sanji, Zoro and Mitsuki all sitting around the beds. Both Luffy and Nami had wet cloths over their foreheads. I'm so happy I could cry, Brooke said, putting his head into Robin's shoulder and sobbing loudly. Robin patted his back just once before stepping away and letting Brooke cry openly for Luffy and Nami. How is SD, coming over and looking down at the pirate she had grown to respect and her captain? None of us are doctors, Zoro shrugged, but she seems to be doing fine. Luffy too. That's such a relief. Tsubaki let out a long breath. I bet you're glad to have her back. We are, Robin smiled. She's our nakama. She's irreplaceable. I'm here, Chopper said, coming in the door. He rushed to the space between the beds that they were lying on and starting checking out the both of them. It speaks, Chika looked at Tsubaki, who waved her down to silence. How's Hana? Kira asked. She's in a stable condition now, Chopper said, looking Nami over. She has a lot of bruises. Hana does? Tsubaki asked. Not that I'm surprised. We fought hard on the kidnapper's ship. Nami, Chopper corrected. Fought, huh? Robin, can you get the ointment I usually use on Zoro, Sanji and Luffy? Robin said, turning to leave. It was more like a rebellion against our captors, Kira said. Nami smacked a lot of those guys around. That sounds like Nami, Zoro muttered, leaning back against the wall and closing his eyes, no longer worried now that Chopper was here. And the bandages, he said loudly, now this fever. I think Yuko said that it was an infection, Chika told him, cautious of the reindeer. From this wound on her arm, Chopper agreed. It's bacterial, Mitsuki, can you go after Robin and get her to find the antibiotics with the blue lid? Alright. Mitsuki got up from the bed, making her way through the girls to go to the infirmary. So will Nami be alright? Ren asked. Chopper smiled. Nami will be just fine. Regret it already? Kiyoshi stood behind Yuko as she faced the docks. Hana was sleeping behind them. I've always regretted it, Yuko murmured, staring at the ship out the window. Mitsuki was there, on a ship of pirates, something she had once claimed to hate. Things had changed so vastly in the year she hadn't seen her sister, she had seen that the moment she laid eyes on her. And Mitsuki had changed for her. Regretted everything? Just not saying goodbye. Yuko glanced at him. Maybe if I had, this would all be different. I went willingly with you, I had the opportunity to say it. He agreed. You did have the opportunity, but how would your sister feel, with you running off with the pirates that had returned a broken girl? She wasn't broken, Yuko said. Heartbroken, he shrugged, but broken nonetheless. Well, her lover died out at sea, and her son, too, because of a disease. Yuko ran a finger across the window pane. This island held a lot of bad memories for her here. But in the end she just wasn't strong enough to handle the pain. I wouldn't have let her go back if I knew what was going to happen, Kiyoshi said, thinking back to his own sister. He wrapped his arms around Yuko's waist and held her from behind. I love you, Yuko said, taking his hand and sliding her fingers through his. Let's get married soon. Is now the time for that, with the current situation between your sister and you? He asked. I didn't mean immediately, Yuko said, tearing her gaze from the ship out the window and turning to face Kiyoshi, just, soon. Kiyoshi brought her hand up to his lips and kissed it gently. We will. Yuko smiled at him, but it faded and looked down at the small space between them. I don't know what to do to make Mitsuki understand. Why don't you just try talking to her? Actually try. You can't be passive in a situation that you want to be heard. Shout, get angry. It may not be how you usually handle things, but I think it'll help. Kiyoshi brushed a strand of her hair back behind her ear. Go, now. Thank you. Yuko pecked his cheek before double-checking on Hana's current situation and running off. You're an idiot, Hana breathed once Yuko was gone. You're awake. Kiyoshi's face didn't show his surprise. What if something happens, and she decides to leave with her sister? Hana had to take large breaths as she spoke, wincing each time as she did so. I would stay here, Kiyoshi said, and I would let her go. I would miss her, but I would let her go. Doing what I do now is important to me. I bet it is, pirate, she spat the word. I don't know what happened to make you hate guys. Kiyoshi walked closer to her beds, and she glared at him. But I hope you're not judging all men on one bad experience. Not all men are what you make them out to be. Prove it, she snarled. How are you any different than the bastards on my island? I can't prove it. That's because all men are the same. No, that's not why, Kiyoshi shook his head. It's because it's one of those things you have to learn on your own. So she'll get better now? Mitsuki asked, taking the antibiotics as Chopper handed them back to her. Chopper nodded, sighing happily. What about the captain? Chika asked. I still don't know what's wrong with him, Chopper frowned. His breathing and fever are so similar to Nami's, but there are no cuts for a bacterial infection. It must be love. Mitsuki put her elbows on her knees and stared at the two of them. To feel the other's pain when they're far apart, that must be real. Mitsuki? Who's shouting? Zoro growled, waking up from a light nap and standing up, but Robin's extra hands pulled him back to a sitting position. Mitsuki? Robin looked at the young girl expectantly. It's my sister. Mitsuki didn't move an inch. She looked totally uninterested in the matter. Mitsuki. Yuko shouted again. You get out your butt out here. She sounds angry, Tsubaki commented. She's really loud, Ran said, covering her ears slightly. Your sister has some great lungs. I think you should go, Chika said. You wanted to see her this entire time, right? She won't say anything anyway, Mitsuki shrugged. Mitsuki. Her sister continued to shout. My poor ears, Brooke said. Not that I have any, yo-ho-ho. Zoro picked Mitsuki up, throwing her over his shoulder. That bitch out there is disturbing my sleep. Get out there and shut her up. Zoro, that is no way to treat a girl, Sanji said, but he didn't make any actions to stop him. She's not a bitch, Mitsuki said, pounding on his back, but I don't want to see her. Zoro went to the railing, glancing over the edge before jumping. Mitsuki screamed, holding on for dear life, and stumbling when Zoro placed her on her feet. She gripped his shirt, not fond of the idea of turning and facing her sister. Zoro let her though, despite having been so rough with her. Above, everyone was leaning on the railing to watch the scene. Mitsuki, Yuko said, her voice colder than it had ever been. Mitsuki, look at me. I told you not to show up in front of me, Mitsuki said, her voice not holding a trace of what she felt. Yuko grabbed her sister's arm, spinning her around. They stared at each other for a moment before Yuko's hand shot out and slapped Mitsuki. Mitsuki stumbled back, taken by surprise. I know that I'm at fault, Yuko told her. I know that I'm not the sister you want. I left because I wanted to, and I know it was wrong not to say a word to you. But how was I supposed to feel? Ever since you were born, you were held in a greater light because your father was greater than mine in position and power. Even mom treasured you more before she died. Auntie was just as horrible. Mitsuki didn't say anything, just held a hand to her cheek. I know it's not your fault, and maybe I did hate you, Yuko said. But you could never understand the position I was in. But I know that here, on this island, is a place that I can be happy in, where I don't have to worry about my position, because I'm going to be marrying Kiyoshi, one of the most amazing guys I had ever met. Then go and live your damned happy life, Mitsuki finally said. I was fine on my own the entire year you were gone. I'll be fine for the rest of my life without you. Yuko smacked her again. Mitsuki slapped her back. I'm not the little Seiyunt anymore. I'm not the same girl that I was a year ago. I've been forced to grow to match my surroundings. And I will continue to grow, with or without you in my life. But I want you in my life, Yuko said, her face softening. I know my actions may not show that all the time, but I do. A tear fell from Mitsuki's eye. I can't bring myself to believe you. Not with you running off with the pirates that broke Kasumi. Will you let me to explain everything? Yuko asked, folding her hands in front of her and looking down at them. I don't want you to leave, and if you choose to, I don't want you leaving while hating me. Mitsuki wiped her eye and looked away, out to the ocean. How long had she been out there, struggling so hard to scrape together money for her sister? And her sister hadn't needed it. Never had, never will. Mitsuki, her gaze swung over everybody on the ship, then down to her sister. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly, before finally saying, I'll listen. A hand softly caressed my cheek, and I opened my eyes to see Luffy staring at me. He smiled at me immediately, one of his goofy grins that I had missed so much. I wanted to touch his face. The way he was with his arm was stretched out across the distance between the two beds. Instead, I lifted a heavy arm to take his hand in mine. I spread his fingers with mine, and looked at our two hands, palm to palm. His hands were larger than mine, and rough proof of all the hard life he led. Becoming Pirate King wasn't an easy task. Was this a dream? It felt so real. I let my fingers fall between his, and he squeezed my hand gently. I raised my eyes to meet his again. My heart, it was beating so fast, but I had never felt so relaxed. I liked this dream. I liked watching as Luffy watched me, the way his eyes met mine and wouldn't let them wander anywhere else. Not that I wanted to look anywhere else. I'm glad you're safe, Luffy finally said. I missed you. I closed my eyes, still feeling sick and wanting to continue rest, though with him being there I felt that much better already. If this really were a dream, please, don't let me wake up. Chapter 22. The final chapter, Sanji, food. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. I almost cried. I was back, I was really back. They had found me, and now I was back home, here on the ship. Sitting up, I realized I was alone. That was fine though, because I wasn't actually alone. They were separated by a room or two. It felt like it had been forever since I'd been so close to them. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I hoped my mycons were alright. I stood up despite the nauseous feeling, the soreness and the pain that was in my arm, and went to my closet, getting changed before looking in the mirror. The pain in my arm was around where the explosion had caused me some damage, but that was bandaged and I didn't dare take it off to actually look at it. I had some minor cuts and bruises elsewhere, but I could smell the medicine chopper used on Luffy when he got injured lingered on my skin. Sighing, I pulled a sweater on to cover the bruises and went out onto the deck. "Thanks for the supplies," Sanji was saying to someone on the dock below. Luffy was holding his leg, letting his body be dragged with Sanji's every movement. Mitsuki was sitting on the swing, a frown on her face as she thought about something. I could see the top of Robin's head by her flower garden on the third floor deck. I had no idea where everyone else was, but everybody looked up as the door shut behind me. "Nami SWA," and Sanji greeted. "Nami?" Mitsuki was smiling now. "You're up." "Are you sure you're okay?" Robin asked. "It's okay to rest. We'll be leaving shortly." "I'm fine," I said, looking over the island. Luffy shot up beside me. "What island is this?" "Nami," Luffy said, pulling on my arm. "Furunme," Robin said. "But the log pose sets in the morning, so we're planning on leaving now. So, you sure you're okay?" "Nami," Luffy tugged on my arm harder. "I'm fine," I repeated. "Furunme? So did you guys defeat the guys that kidnapped me and Mitsuki's sister? Did you find Mitsuki's sister?" "We found her," Mitsuki spoke slowly and deliberately. "But apparently the kidnappers aren't bad guys after all." "No, I'm pretty sure kidnapping is a crime," I said. "What she means is that the girls they kidnap are usually suicidal or being abused in some way or another," Chika said, climbing over the railing. She grinned up at me. "You look like shit." "I think she looks fantastic." Tsubaki took Sanji's hand when he reached over to help her over. "Nami," Luffy continued pulling at my arm. I missed his whiny tone a little, and I liked him saying my name. Was that how Hancock felt? Was I sinking to her level? "Thanks," I rolled my eyes. I glanced over at Luffy, who had blown his cheeks up but was looking at the village as he waited for me to pay attention to him. I smiled slightly before turning back to the girls. "So all of you had a hard life?" Chika said. "Though some of us more than others, Hana really hates guys. She tried to attack Kyoshi but ended up getting shot. The Tanuki and Yuko both tended to her, so she's more or less alright for now." "She was killing all those guys on the other ship, wasn't she?" I asked, gripping the deck. I felt sick. Luffy slipped closer to me. "She was," Rand said, looking away. I exhaled slowly, disappointed that I had been right. "Nami," Luffy said my name once more. "What?" I finally turned to him. Nami," Hancock called from beside Robin. I looked over at her. "You should probably take a bath. Salome can smell you from here." "I was planning on it," I muttered. I looked up at Luffy. "I'm glad to be back, but I really do want a bath." Luffy crossed his arms and puffed up his cheeks again. "Sorry," I apologized, though I wasn't entirely sure how at fault I was. "You'll have to talk to me later," Luffy called after me as I went down the stairs. I smiled up at him. "So you're really okay?" Mitsuki asked as I passed her. "I'll be back to normal in no time." I reached out to ruffle her hair. She grinned as she fixed it. "And then you'll teach me some more, right?" she asked hopefully. "What about your sister?" I asked. "We'll talk about that later," she said, turning away, pushing off and swinging gently. I nodded, even though she wasn't looking, and continued up to the second floor deck. I entered the kitchen and was greeted by Frankie. "Nami, you're up," he said, looking over the kitchen counter. He turned on the sink's tap and turned it off, satisfied. "Feeling better?" "Feeling great," I told him. "But I'm off to take a shower, so if you'll excuse me." "We're glad you're back," he said as I grabbed the rungs of the ladder. "I'm glad to be back." I looked over my shoulder before climbing up. Robin held out a hand to pull me up the last little way. "Thank you." "You're still warm," she said, frowning slightly. "Warm," I repeated. "Not burning up. I'm sure I can handle a small fever." Robin's frown turned gradually into a smile. She gave me a small hug quickly before collecting herself. "You really are starting to smell." "It's been, like, 4 days since I've taken a bath," I felt disgusting, due to unfortunate circumstances that I, unfortunately, had no control over. Unfortunately, she laughed. Go on now. Is the Empress waiting for me? I asked, rolling my eyes, as I realized she wasn't on this deck any longer. Seems like she has a story to tell, Robin shrugged. Though I have a faint idea, I'll let her tell you herself. I have the feeling you know more than simply a faint idea, I smirked. But I'll go. You might have to keep lookout though, in case she tries to kill me, I said sarcastically. Hancock isn't desperate enough to kill you, Robin laughed. Luffy might actually hate her at that point. Killing his precious nakama. I felt hurt saying the words. Maybe I wouldn't ever be anything more than nakama to him. Luffy treasures nakama above all else, Robin agreed. Well, above most things. Most things? I repeated as I began to walk to the observation room. Well, I suppose there's meat. Not meat, Robin grinned slyly. Then what? I asked. Robin. Luffy called out. Just go. I hated her when she did that, making it seem like she knew so much more than I did. And maybe she did, with all those books she read. But it still pissed me off. I entered the library, eyeing the snake on the floor, and went to the ladder, climbing up and stripping in the room above and laying my clothes beside Hancock's in the basket. I knocked on the door, testing the knob almost immediately to find it unlocked. I sighed and opened the door, not surprised to see Hancock already in the bath. She didn't say anything as I locked the door and crossed the room, being careful of my bandages as I got into the nice and warm water. It stung my cuts, but it felt nice to be in a bath. I almost opened my mouth to say something to fill the silence, but stopped myself, not wanting to give in to her just yet. Instead, I just picked up a bar of soap and started washing the dirt from my skin. I was a slave as a young girl, Hancock said suddenly. I dropped the bar of soap in the water, and it slid away from me when I tried to grab it. I chased it halfway across the tub, my bandages getting soaked in the process. I would have to get Chopper to change them for me later. When I finally gripped the soap, I held it close to my body, unsure of what to say. To make it worse, I was a slave to the Tenryubito, she continued, unfazed by my clumsy actions. And I was branded with this mark. She turned around, pulling her long hair over her shoulder, revealing the crest of the Tenryubito, the hoof of the soaring dragon. You don't have to say any more, I told her. I didn't know I wouldn't have said that you hadn't experienced hardship otherwise. What do you know about this crest? What I've read from books, I replied, digging my nails into the soap to keep it from slipping away again. And I'd say that's enough to know that what you went through probably brings back awful memories. She didn't say anything for AM. What happened to that heart-to-heart atmosphere we almost had there? I muttered, beginning to use the soap once more. I hate you, she repeated, an unemotional look passing over her face as she leaned back and lifted her long legs above the water to rest on the ledge, with a passion, actually. I'm not really sure what I did to deserve that. I got up and went to the shower, turning it on and sitting on the stool so I could wash my hair. Because I told you I didn't love Luffy? I really hadn't acknowledged my feelings at that time. But I'll tell you now, I looked over at her and met her gaze. I do love him. She got out of the water, grabbing a towel and wrapping it around her. I know. She went to the door. But I still hate you. If I could kill you, I would. But I can't. Thanks for letting me live. I rolled my eyes as she exited the room, turning back to the shower head to finish washing my hair. I ran my fingertips from my scalp to the tips of my hair. It was one of those moments where I was thankful for Frankie's workmanship more than anything. I'm starving, I said as I sat down at the dining room table. The crew was on their way up, and Chika as well as the rest of the girls were going to join us. Kiyoshi had supplied food to make up for the misunderstanding. I guess he really wasn't such a bad guy. Chika, Tsubaki, Ran and Kira weren't going to stay on this island. They were going to come with us to Akaki Island. Kira would wait for Marines to come to the island before she went off to join them. Until then, they were going to buy a house on the island. I made some food that should make you feel better, Nami SWA, and Sanji said, laying a bowl of soup and some other dishes in front of me. Oi, Sanji, what about me? Luffy asked, bouncing up and down in his seat. Yeah, Sanji went to the kitchen and grabbed another couple of plates, bringing them and laying them down. There, your meat. Yes, Luffy grinned down at the food before looking at me. Oi, Nami. Nami, Mitsuki stood at my elbow. I know you're leaving after dinner, but I really want to talk to you." "Alone?" I asked. "Please." Mitsuki looked down at her hands. "I'll send your food down to the aquarium," Sanji said as the others filed into the room. "Thank you," I said, standing up. But, Nami, Luffy grabbed my arm. "Sorry," Mitsuki said, and as I turned to look at her I saw her sticking out her tongue. She looked apologetically up at me when she saw that I had seen, and repeated, more shamefully, "Sorry." "Nami," Luffy pouted. "Sorry, Luffy," I bowed my head as I apologized. "I'll come find you when Mitsuki and I finish." Luffy frowned, but released me. I really did want to stay with him. But Mitsuki pulled at my arm when I was a little reluctant, and I followed her out of the room. The two of us went down to the aquarium, where I opened the service elevator to retrieve my food. I took a bite, savoring it. Sanji's food really was great. "So what happened with your sister?" I asked after a moment. "She's getting married," she avoided my gaze, "to Kiyoshi." "Kiyoshi turned out to be not such a bad guy," I reminded her. "Yeah," she admitted, "but that doesn't save from the fact that my sister went missing a year ago. I don't know if I should forgive her or not. She didn't say anything when she left. She never sent letters to tell me and my aunt we were okay. And she's marrying the guy that I hated for an entire year, because I thought that he was doing something horrible to her all this time. And it turns out that broken girl on my island was suffering because of heartache, not from whatever horrors they may have done. So what's the problem? She wants me to stay with her and Kiyoshi." I took a sip of the soup before responding, and? "I'm not sure if I should do it," she said, finally meeting my gaze. "What do you want to do?" I asked her. "I don't know." She rested her elbows on the counter and her head in her hands. "I honestly thought that you'd be helping me more than this." "What do you want me to say?" I snorted. Go now, and don't ever look back. Or perhaps, stay so that I can teach you how to be a criminal?" "I want you to say something to help me make up my mind." She got up and went to the fish tank. "What was your initial reason for coming here?" I ripped apart a bun and dipped it in the soup. "You were brave enough to face the new world, but you're not brave enough to face your sister when it counts the most?" "So you're telling me I should stay?" She turned. "I'm telling you that you need to stop thinking and just act. When you came to rescue your sister, did you ever stop to think that you could potentially get killed out on the sea?" "I just wanted her back," Mitsuki said, running her hand over the glass. "Out of all the hardship you faced, did you ever once regret coming out to save your sister?" "Well, now, when the hardships were happening," I told her. "No," she admitted. "A few scars and bruises felt like a lot worse than what my sister had to be going through." "And do you understand what your sister is feeling now?" Mitsuki didn't say anything, and I chewed thoughtfully. "If you still find it hard to decide, think about this. You can leave at any time," I told her after a moment. "But if you leave now and ever decide to forgive her mistakes, it'll only become harder to face her." She didn't speak immediately, just let the weight of my words sink in. "How long until you set sail?" 2 hours, I told her. "Don't rush for a decision though." "I won't," she said, before leaving the room. I was left alone in the aquarium to finish my food. I kind of wished that Luffy was hiding around the corner like last time. Now would be a good time to talk about everything. We'd be alone, no one to bother us because they would all be eating. The door opened, and I looked up, expecting it to be Luffy, but it was Chopper. "I wanted to make sure you were doing all right," Chopper said. "I'm almost done eating," I told him. "Then we can go up to the infirmary." He came over and sat beside me. "So did you fight with the snake while I was away?" I asked him. "He was fetching Hancock's sisters," he replied. "Have you faced him since he came back?" "I'm trying to avoid any conflicts in the last day that they're here," Chopper said. "It is their last day, huh?" I murmured. "No more Hancock, no more having to share a room with her. No more snake that just likes to instigate fights," Chopper added. "No more have to put up with her looking at the ceiling when she's supposedly looking down on us," I grinned. "No more her trailing after Luffy. It's going to be good to have her gone." I sighed, stretching and wincing. I lifted the bowl of soup to my lips, and closed my eyes as the warm liquid made its way down. I set the plate down and put the dish back in the service elevator. "All right, let's go." We went the long way to the infirmary instead of cutting across the dining room. I sat on the bed and waited as Chopper took off the bandages to look at the infected cut. He rubbed something over it before putting on new bandages. I took the other ointment from him and began rubbing it over the other cuts. This entire process went on without a real word spoken. "So you are in here," Luffy said, the door to the kitchen opening. "Chopper, I want to talk to Nami." Chopper said, jumping down from his chair and going to through the door as Luffy held it open. "Nami, oi, you damned dark brow," Zoro shouted. I wasn't finished eating. "Nami." There was a crash as dishes broke. "Hey, muscle brain, you almost hit Hancock-sama," Sanji shouted back at him. "Nam," I looked down to see Luffy clenching his fist. "She shouldn't have chosen that moment to walk in," Zoro retorted. There was another crash as I spoke, "Go outside." He nodded, taking my arm and flinging the deck door open. He wrapped his arm around me, making my heart nearly stop, and using his other arm he pulled us up onto the third deck. Finalizing the ladder hatch as he walked by. We could still hear shouting from below, but that was fine. As I walked along the railing I could see Mitsuki sitting on the edge of the dock and staring at the water beneath her feet. Luffy came up beside me, and stole a glance at me. I saw him watching me in the corner of my eye. "Nami," he paused, as if waiting for something else to happen. He threw his fist in the air with his little victory, "Yosh, shi." I laughed with him. "I'm glad you're back." Luffy jumped up and perched on the railing. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't continue. "I'm sorry," I told him. "It was my stubbornness that got me taken away. I hadn't known about Hancock." "That doesn't even matter anymore," he said, gazing out at the sea. Along the horizon we could still see an orange glow. Suddenly he jumped back off the railing and I turned to keep my eye on him. He picked up my hand, holding it to check for my pulse again. "Is it beating quickly?" I replied. "Hancock told me." His voice trailed off. "Does this really mean that you're in love?" I felt really put on the spot. I took my hand away from him, but he grabbed it again and opened my fingers, resting his palm against mine. This felt oddly familiar. Like I was reliving a dream déjà vu. I closed my eyes momentarily, trying to calm my racing heart. "I really did miss you," Luffy said, and my eyes flew open, realizing something as he went on. "Earlier, it hadn't been a dream. When you were gone, there was this mysterious feeling in my chest." I stared at our hands. "I think I know that feeling." "Nami," his stomach growled and he grinned. "Oh, I must be hungry still." I brought my fist down on his head, angry that he couldn't get his priorities straight. I walked over to my mycons, picking one carefully before peeling it and throwing the peels into the bucket. "Nami," Luffy called, from his position lying on the deck. He sat up and looked. I asked, turning to face him once more, placing a piece of the mycon in my mouth. "I love you." I didn't know how to respond. Maybe I was hearing things. If I ignored him, would he say it again? Would it pass by as if he never said it at all? I stood there rooted to the spot, only able to watch as he covered the distance between us. He placed his hands on either side of my face and looked down into my eyes. In a fast, impulsive action, his lips were on mine. This definitely wasn't a dream. He pulled away a moment later, grinning. Luffy took off his hat and placed it on my head. "Well, get better soon, Nami." And with that he leapt over the edge and onto the deck below. I heard the door slam shut before I sunk to my knees, my hand hovering just above my lips as I sat there. He had taken the mycon piece that had been in my mouth. I looked up, my gaze falling on Mitsuki, who I could see between the spaces of the railing. She was standing now, and deliberately looking in my direction. She broke into a grin and gave a small wave before walking away. She saw. I just knew she did. She glanced over her should once more before disappearing into the village. I covered my face with my hands, slightly embarrassed. But I was extremely happy. "Then I guess this is goodbye," Hancock said, standing in front of me, her shoulders squared off and holding every ounce of that rude empress personality in her voice. You would think a week on a ship with another crew would change a person. "Ladies," Sanji was shouting over to Hancock's ship and waving wildly. "You're all looking lovely today." "Excuse me, may I see your panties?" Brooke was yelling beside him. I took my sandal off and threw it at them, smirking happily when it hit the two of them. "Hannah's already on your ship?" I asked. She replied. "I'm surprised you're just walking away without a fight." Mitsuki slipped into the position beside me. "I'm not giving up," Hancock said, crossing her arms. With every word she spoke her head tilted further back. "Soon you will realize which of us two can better support him, which is me." Once he sees your naked body he'll realize it doesn't compare to mine. Luffy has seen me naked, long time ago, I told her. When had he seen you naked? Also a long time ago. What was his reaction? She asked. Bloody nose, I told her, squaring my shoulders up. Well, soon you will realize that my body is better, she said, beginning to walk away. Less than a bloody nose, Mitsuki laughed. Oh, before I go. Hancock stopped and turned, walking back to me. She brought her hand back and slapped me. Oi, Zoro called out. Don't further hurt the injured, Chopper shouted. I brought back my fist and punched her. She stumbled back, surprised I had the guts to hit her like that. I may not be a Shichibukai, I began. And I may not possess the powers of a devil's fruit, but I will not bow down to you. She hit the Empress. I could hear her warriors on her ship whispering. I'm not giving up, Hancock repeated. I didn't expect you to. I crossed my arm, badly wanting to put ice on it or something. I think she had been using her hockey. That stung like hell. But I will win. Tell me that when you get stronger. She raised her nose in the air. I'll be back sometime. Perhaps we'll have a real battle, fighting for his love. An easy win, I told her smugly. We'll see, she replied. Hancock, Luffy jumped down beside us. I felt Mitsuki's eyes on me and I turned my face away slightly. Luffy, she greeted happily, wrapping her arms around him. His head fell between her breasts, and I heard his words being muffled by her skin once more. A farewell so much like the day she first stepped onto this boat. She really hadn't changed at all. No goodbyes this time either, alright? Alright. Luffy grinned as he pulled away. Hancock smiled self-righteously at me. I wanted to hit that smile off her face. She, we'll meet again someday. She smiled. Her cheeks were bright with a pretty blush. All the girls on the opposite ship screamed happily. Thank you, Luffy. She leapt over the distance to her ship with ease, landing in a SXY manner. I hated her arrogance and the way she thought she was so beautiful. I hated how she drooled over Luffy like Luffy drooled over food. But she was a good person to have on our side. So long as she didn't overstep the boundary. So what about you? I asked, turning to Mitsuki. She opened her mouth to say something. Mitsuki, Yuko called, running down the docks. I'm not gone yet, Mitsuki shouted back. So you're coming along? I asked. Only until we reach Akaki Island once more, she turned, looking at her sister as Kiyoshi helped her onto our ship. I'll be living with Chika and Tsubaki until I can completely forgive my sister. Not too far, not too close. I'm glad, I smiled warmly at her as she went to see her sister. Kiyoshi was keeping Sanji and Brook at bay as they shouted over to Hancock's ship as it pulled away. I was relieved. Slowly, Luffy's fingers wrapped around my wrist, sliding down to hold my hand loosely. I looked at him, and he grinned. I like touching you. I should start charging you, I told him. He just laughed, watching as Hancock's ship pulled further and further away. What did she come here for, anyway? I asked. Using my name to protect her island. Luffy looked at me. I don't see why she needed a week to talk about that. I rolled my eyes. I think there was a proposal in there, but I'm not marrying her. I smirked, shaking my head and continued to gaze at the other ship. Suddenly it caught fire, and all you could hear on her ship was the screaming of Hancock as she fell into total despair. A few seconds later it exploded and, Nami? Luffy tugged at my hand gently. I'm coming, I told him. We should set sail, too. I glanced once more at Hancock's ship. It was still in one piece, drifting further and further away, unfortunately. Well, a girl could dream.